Good morning, and welcome to your early morning Stylo News Intelligence Update. I'm your host, and today is July 27th, 2026. For the next few minutes, we're going to deliver a calm, completely objective, fact-based situational report covering the key strategic flashpoints across the Asian continent. Think of this explainer as your lead-in to our comprehensive Stylo News Intelligence Update morning podcast, where we really dig into 2 weeks of compounding events in these specific regions. Today, we're relying strictly on the data to map out the most critical geopolitical movements. So, let's get right into it. Before we dive in, this intelligence update is sponsored by ProWave AI. They're the developers behind Stylo News, which is an AI-powered open-source intelligence engine, as well as Stylo News, the commercial version you can find on the web and mobile apps. Essentially, ProWave AI's platform gathers and normalizes data from over 250 global sources in more than 20 languages. It literally turns raw, multi-dimensional global data into objective, actionable OSINT insights in under 60 seconds.
Our agenda for today will scan the operating environments theater by theater. First, a China and Taiwan assessment. Second, North Korea regional alignments. Third, South Asia security flashpoints. And finally, Southeast Asia stability threats.
Starting with Section 1, the China and Taiwan assessment, evaluating the gray zone campaign. We're going to transition first to the Taiwan Strait. Our goal here is to assess both the immediate and medium-term risks of cross-strait military conflict, based entirely on the latest intelligence estimates. Grounding our analysis is the current operational map of the Taiwan Strait and its surrounding exclusive economic zones. Now, what the intelligence confirms right now is the sheer absence of any mass amphibious embarkation, reserve call-ups, or broad logistics dispersal along coastal China. The immediate military posture is heavily monitored, for sure, but the physical indicators of an imminent full-scale invasion simply aren't present today.
So here is the bottom line up front regarding the data. Intelligence indicates an immediate invasion is highly unlikely, keeping the near-term threat level low. The medium-term risk, however, definitely remains elevated. We are observing coercive gray zone pressure, things like repeated median-line crossings by Chinese helicopters. This serves to normalize military conditions and test regional responses, all without actually crossing the threshold of conventional war.
We're actually seeing a pretty stark contrast emerge. On the immediate timeline, People's Liberation Army fighter sorties near Taiwan fell to a 3-year low in the first half of 2026. Yet, when we look at normalization indicators driven by Beijing's long-term strategy, we see steady rehearsals of blockade conditions and PLA steel rain live fire drills. Analyst chatter and social media sentiment are actively discussing cellular blackout and siege scenarios. What this tells us is that while imminent mobilization is absent, long-term battle space preparation is very much active.
Moving on to Section 2, North Korea regional alignments, shifting alliances, and deterrence.
We're shifting north to the Korean Peninsula. This is an area where traditional indicators of conflict are currently quiet, but geopolitical alignments are rapidly shifting right beneath the surface. Reviewing the current theater map of the peninsula and the demilitarized zone, we can confidently state there's no forward deployment of armor. We aren't seeing unusual air activity, and there are no confirmed missile-fielding preparations aimed at South Korea. In fact, tactical military incidents have remained at a baseline 0 over our latest reporting windows.
However, analyzing the broader strategic intelligence reveals a really complex realignment. Chairman Kim Jong-un's primary focus right now remains on deepening his military entanglement with Vladimir Putin's Russia, and that is a development reportedly causing some unease for Xi Jinping in Beijing. Meanwhile, President Yoon's administration in South Korea is recalibrating, shifting away from a strict denuclearization-first approach amid this deteriorating security environment. Internally, North Korea is conducting purge and expanding infrastructure along the DMZ, signaling a preparation for internal regime control rather than an unprovoked external attack.
Now, to understand these internal movements, intelligence platforms utilize what's called pattern of life analysis. This is an automated open-source methodology that tracks daily operational habits. By establishing a baseline of what normal behavior looks like, AI bots can instantly flag anomalous activity. In this case, pattern of life analysis confirms that the recent infrastructure expansions near the DMZ are defensive and internally focused, designed to tighten regime control rather than stage an offensive operation.
Section 3, South Asia's security flashpoints, sub-threshold friction.
Shifting our focus to South Asia, we're evaluating a theater where the threat of large-scale intrastate war remains quite low, but internal instability presents a very real, moderate risk for crisis escalation. Examining the regional borders of Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India, the intelligence confirms the absence of broad troop mobilization. There are no cross-border fires occurring between the major state powers of India and China, or India and Pakistan. The immediate risk of a major theater war is low.
The actual friction here lies just below the threshold of conventional war. Afghanistan remains a persistent sanctuary for militants of the TTP, which directly fueled a July 23rd grenade attack on a Pakistani military post in South Waziristan. Furthermore, this internal instability and militant violence spill right over into the diplomatic arena. We saw evidence of this in recent sharp clashes between India and Pakistan at the ASEAN meetings regarding Kashmir and counterterrorism. Essentially, internal fragility is driving the regional diplomatic friction.
Section 4. Southeast Asia Stability Threats, Maritime Coercion and Transnational Crime.
We now turn to Southeast Asia to identify the primary theaters of instability in a region currently under sustained strategic pressure. These converging vectors are severely testing the cohesion of the ASEAN bloc. The most prominent interstate flashpoint remains the South China Sea, defined by persistent maritime coercion and Coast Guard activity. Concurrently, the strongest immediate internal threat is the ongoing armed conflict in Myanmar, which threatens civilian security and border management across mainland Southeast Asia.
Perhaps the most staggering piece of intelligence regarding regional stability is the sheer scale of illicit financial flows. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, an estimated $114 billion is generated annually through the transnational organized crime, cyber fraud, and scam hub ecosystem operating in Southeast Asia. To put that into perspective, this illicit economy involves over 80 nationalities and forced labor centers, deeply intertwining with local power structures and severely degrading regional governance.
Based on these converging threats, our anticipated courses of action rely on three key steps. First, we need to closely monitor Scarborough Shoal and the Second Thomas Shoal for any maritime miscalculations. Second, track the ASEAN diplomatic communiques emerging from Manila. Broad social media sentiment corroborates that ASEAN, despite its challenges, currently serves as the principal, albeit fragile, de-escalatory mechanism in the region. And third, observe exactly how external powers respond to this friction, as their actions could either calm or inflame the entire situation.
Section 5. Strategic Outlook, Near-Term Briefing and Indicators.
To conclude our theater scans, here is a focused watch list for you, based entirely on current intelligence estimates. Expect continued PLA gray zone activity near Taiwan, like those median line crossings, without imminent invasion indicators. Watch for further North Korean and Russian technology transfers. That's the most consequential dynamic on the peninsula right now. Monitor for localized border incidents stemming from militant activity in South Waziristan. And finally, pay very close attention to the diplomatic outcomes from the ASEAN meetings in Manila, which will dictate the temperature of the South China Sea.
As we wrap up this explainer, we want to leave you with one final, objective question to consider as you look at this raw data. As we observe cumulative strategic stress across multiple theaters, from maritime coercion to transnational crime, are current regional diplomatic mechanisms, like ASEAN, resilient enough to contain these cascading gray zone threats?
Thank you for joining us for this early morning explainer. To hear a deep dive into the last 2 weeks of events in these specific regions, please listen to the Stylo News Intel Update Morning Podcast on your favorite channel, or simply follow the link provided in this post. We also invite you to subscribe to Stylo News, where you can get AI-powered news on demand. Visit www.stylonews.com. I'm your host, signing off. Stay informed.